Good morning. Today we'll do a poem by William Blake by the title of London. Okay, before I begin, let me just give you my introduction. My name is Anshu Sharma, and I am Associate Professor at Government College, Chaksu. So, good morning once again. Before explaining this poem, London, by William Blake, let me just give you a quick introduction of the poem. Blake's poem London has featured in his collection of poems, The Songs of Experience, published in 1794. Just like the earlier poem, The Tiger, that we had discussed. Now, this is a poem about the social and political woes plaguing the city of London at the turn of the 19th century, which was a period of industrialization. It documents the different encounters the poet has while he traverses the streets of London. The sights fill him with delight. Fill him with disgust and despair. The emotions he sees reflected in the faces he encounters with their marks of weakness, marks of woe, make for an unhappy experience for the poet. Now, this London is a city of desperate cries, and there are mind forged manacles. Then there is revolutionary agitation, and there are harlots' curses. These unhappy visions are described in four stanzas of concise, rhymed tetrameter. From this poetic form, Blake creates a tone that is at once song-like and severe at the same time. This poem reveals Blake's feelings towards the society he lived in. England at that time was known to be the most restrictive of societies, and people followed a specific societal protocol. The poem is still universal and timeless because every society has restrictions which it has placed on human lives. The speaker makes it amply clear that he believes the government to have too much control and that the society is too stringent. Now, before I give a detailed analysis, let me just quickly read the poem. You have it on your screens. London. I wander through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind forged manacles I hear. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldiers sigh, runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlots curse, blasts the newborn infant's tear, and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. Now, stanza first. You will note that in the first stanza, the speaker provides the setting and the tone. The setting is suggested by the title itself, but the first stanza also reveals that the speaker is walking down the street of London. There is a special connotation to the word wander and chartered. He wanders down the chartered street. It appears that the poet is not very sure of himself as he wanders without any set destination. There is a hint of being either misguided or aimless or maybe a bit lost. That is what the word wander suggests. On the other hand, the use of the term chartered is the opposite, as it suggests an image of being fixed. Chartered is also a word used for fixed routes taken by buses or ships. Here it also suggests that the streets he is walking through are controlled and rigid. He is not walking in a free open field, but a confined, rigid, mapped out area. And while walking, thus, he notices something particular about the faces of people walking by. Um there's no laughter, there's no cheer, there's no chatter. Rather, all the faces are marked by signs of weariness. And the faces also carry marks of weakness and woe. Now, this specially sets up the tone as melancholy and sad. The gloom all around seems to seep into the speaker's voice as he describes the various passers by. Then, in the second stanza, we see that while the first stanza sets up the tone of the London city, the second stanza throws light into the speaker's melancholy feelings towards the people he watches passing by. And from the cry of the newborn infant to the cry of the full grown man, he hears the mind forged manacles. Manacles means shackles, or you can say some kind of chain that keeps a person tied or imprisoned, like as if put into a jail. And but the fact is that these chains are mind forged. These are not actual chains made of iron, or it's not actually as if people have been put behind bars, but rather they are mind forged, which indicates that they are virtual or metaphorical chains which have been created by the people's own ideas or beliefs, or it can also be that they have been imposed upon by the society or by the government. And this is specifically indicated by the use of the word ban, which means prohibition or some kind of restriction imposed by law. Ban is like now quite a serious, heavy word which indicates that it has a sanction of the rule of law behind it. So there's a ban on the people. There is also the repetition of the word every cry of every man, of every infant, which again indicates that each cry of each individual, whether an adult or a mere infant, is full of pain and fear. And this is because the individuals are not free. The thoughts, pressures, and ideals of society as existed then are under scrutiny here, and they are scrutinized by the poet himself, wandering and observing these very surroundings. Then you move on to the third stanza, and you see that in the third stanza, the speaker specifically refers to the chimney sweeper and the soldiers. In the second stanza, there's a generalization. He's generally talking about people, he's generally talking about the young and the adults both. But in the third stanza, he is specific and he is referring to the chimney sweepers. And the poet employs that the shackles worn by the people and inflicted by the society have some disastrous results. The chimney sweeper's plight is obvious as he is one of the poorest of society. His life expectancy is threatened because of his line of work, the kind of work that he does. His work has exposed him to extreme dirt and therefore the possibility of illness. And those of the lowest classes of society were forced into this kind of work in order to survive and provide for their families. And the next that the speaker criticizes is the church, because that too is blackening. Blackening is the word that has been used for the church. And the church seems to be appalled at the chimney sweepers, who were often very young children, because it was only very, very small children who could enter the chimneys to clean them, as only small bodies could fit into them. And also, usually, they were orphans for whom the church itself was responsible. So, there's like kind of the church is appalled. At the same time, it is the church that is blackened because it was the church's responsibility to take care of these orphans. But these orphans have been forced into child labor, and this explains why the poet ties the chimney sweepers with the blackening church. And while the hypocrisy of the church is apparent through their treatment of the poorest of the poor, the young children that is, the poet also criticizes the government by suggesting that it is responsible for the victimization of the hapless soldiers. Again, people who have given up their lives to protect the state, and in return, the corrupt government turns a blind eye towards their plight. The poet reveals his feelings towards war by describing the blood that runs down the palace walls, the same palaces where the royalty lives, and that royalty which is responsible for the well being of the soldiers. But instead of taking care of them, they are spilling their blood unnecessarily, and these unfortunate soldiers are they are victimized. They have lost their lives in order to keep the comforts of the palace in place. So this is these are the two set of people of the society that are being specifically mentioned here in the third stanza by Blake. Then, in the fourth and the final stanza, you see that the victimization of the innocent is further highlighted, because now here the speaker reveals how the corrupted society attacks the lowest of the low. The picture of the young harlot cursing suggests the level of poverty and helplessness where such a young girl who is yet to gain full maturity is forced into prostitution. And the intensity of the pathos is further highlighted when the speaker reveals that it is the tears of the newborn baby that she is cursing. Now, this is the ultimate attack upon the innocent. The youngest child is being cursed by the harlot, but or is it cursed by the society? And it is not very clear whether the child belongs to the harlot or not, but the poet does imply that instead of comforting a crying infant, she curses it. Now, it is generally expected, or it is, a woman is supposed to have those softer feelings, the love, affection, kindness towards the young children. But here it is there is no sympathy that the harlot feels for the child. Rather, she curses it, and instead of comforting the child when she hears that the child is crying, she curses it. Now, this reveals the hardened heart of the harlot, which in turn represents the hardened heart of the society at large, because nobody is responsible for these people. Nobody is responsible for their upkeep and care. And while the innocent shed tears, the society shuns them. This is the comment that Blake hints at when he describes this scene. Then, towards the end of the poem, the poet comments upon the sacred institution of marriage as well, because the harlot apparently has blighted the marriage hers. And this final image is an oxymoron, because hearses are for funerals and not weddings. This indicates that the young unmarried mother's unwanted child and the misery of both the mother and the infant is the final nail driven into the idea of marriage as a sacred union. The union which is supposed to bring bliss, it is supposed to bring happiness, and it is supposed to be blessed at the same time, blessed with babies. But it was supposed to be a holy union between two people, and then finally they are blessed with the joy of having a child out of that union. But here the very institution is damaged by the harlot's curses, or rather by the evils that persist in society. The innocence, as indicated by the young child, the chimney sweeper, the adolescent girl, are all blighted due to the ills of the society. The church is also to blame, and the government too. And all these together, these pillars, they prove to be very, very overpowering and very, very destructive for the fabric of a healthy, happy society. Then this is the detailed explanation that I have given you of each paragraph. Now, before I move on to the technicalities, let me just talk a little about some important points in detail which can help you in framing your answers. First, London is a narrative poem about the sufferings during the age of industrialization. It was first published in 1974 in the volume Songs of Experience. The poem speaks about the speaker's journey through the streets of London, portraying all that which is not right with the city. It also deals with the child labor, slavery, and prostitution. Secondly, London is a representative of sorrow. The poem narrates what he's the narrate sorry the poet narrates what he sees and hears while wandering in the streets of London. The poem begins with the speaker when the speaker is walking along the river Thames, that has been mentioned, and as he passes along, he comes across many weary and mournful faces. No happiness around, no laughter, no happy conversations. Rather, there are cries and sounds of suffering because people are forced to work in horrid conditions. He is unhappy to see how poverty and sickness has doomed everything around him. Basically, his heart is crying out for the condition that the city is in at that time. He continues to describe the miserable cries of the chimney sweepers, darkening churches, and the soldiers who died because of war. War that was perhaps not needed. Then at midnight, he hears the prostitute cursing, the baby's cries, the kind of curses that would be blasphemous towards the innocence and purity of that tiny little soul. So, thus, you can see